G'day Art Snackers, my name is James of James Luke Burke Creative. Welcome to another month of Box Freestyle, where we take the supplies from this month's ArtSnacks Plus box, experiment with them to within an inch of their lives, and create an absolute masterpiece for the hashtag ArtSnacks Challenge. In keeping with tradition here, I thought I'd share another little bit about myself. Now, it being December and the season I celebrate Christmas with my family, I thought I'd let you know about a little tradition that made its way from Australia all the way over here to California. For as long as I can remember, there has always been this silent mission between my family members to get prime position on the Christmas tree for our favorite ornaments, meaning you would try and get your ornament to the front, to the middle, or if not, just right at the top of the tree, which always made for a pretty interesting looking Christmas tree. I am proud to say that that tradition made its way transatlantic, and I do that now in my own home, and many of my favorite Christmas ornaments are towards the front and the top of the tree. Although I do have to give credit where credit is due, my gran was the ultimate winner. The one year she took her cross stitch and put it on the actual star of the tree, so I don't think you could get any better than that. My question for you this month is, what are some holiday traditions you celebrate around this time of year? And with that, let's get into the December 2020 ArtSnacks Plus box, see what we've got inside, and make a little something. Alrighty, here's our December 2020 ArtSnacks Plus box. There's everything inside. Let's unwrap that green burrito and see what we're going to be playing with this December. We have the Borden & Riley 234 Paris paper pad for pens. It's a 9x12 pad and there are lots of sheets in there. We have the Kuretake Zig Superior Line Kokoiro letter pen, so both those items are in the plus box. We also have the Kuretake Zig Clean Color F double-ended marker, and the color I got was light blue. We have two Derwent paint pens. I got dark blue and magenta. We also have the Royal Talons Ecoline brush pens. Two of those, I have carmine and warm grey, as well as the Graphite alcohol-based twin tip marker with a brush and fine liner tip. I have the Celadon color, which is kind of like a grey green. Let's get to swatching everything out and experimenting and see what we come up with. Every month on Box Freestyle, we like to get a little experimental with our supplies, just see what they do under pressure, and try and figure out if there's any unusual application that we can use with some of the mediums. I like to play in mixed media, and I say this all the time, but I'll use pretty much anything I can get my hands on. It doesn't mean I know what it's going to do when I get my hands on it. So this is a really integral part of the process when I'm learning about new supplies, and I love to just put them through their paces and see what they can do. I will say, and I don't think I've mentioned this before, but not all papers are created equal, and that doesn't mean that one of them is better than the other, but I will just straight up admit I am most used to working with watercolor paper, which is why I get the urge to put water down and then draw on top of it, or to, put my water-based markers on the page and then try and spread them out with a paintbrush and water. It's because typically on watercolor paper you can push the limits of all of those water-based mediums. Unfortunately, that doesn't translate to different types of paper, and it's not a bad thing. I think what I have always meant to say, and probably just never said it, was that paper can be formulated for different reasons, and because it is for a specific purpose, it may not work the best for the purpose that I'm trying to force it to work with. So you'll see a lot of these washes, even as I'm doing it on the screen right there, it's not a really smooth and watercolory wash. It kind of looks streaky, and if you were really trying to get those watercolor effects, you would kind of struggle on this paper. But that's because this paper is specifically formulated for ink work, as far as not having any kind of feathering or bleeding. So all that really fine calligraphy, all that really beautiful detailed line work, any illustrations that are just very clean and crisp, this is a beautiful paper for that. It's a really smooth surface, there's not a lot of tooth to it, it's really bright white, so I imagine this would be great for those Copic marker illustrations, or even more of that lettering style and typography, because you can get some really, really crisp lines with this, and that was really evident using the Superior Line Kokoiro letter pen. I absolutely loved it on this paper. I thought it was such a pleasurable experience to use that specific pen on this paper. But I guess I never mentioned it because I thought that was something that people knew, but just in case you didn't know that, papers can be made for different different purposes. So if you're using a marker pad, or you're using this specific one here, the Paris paper for pens pad, so very specifically formulated for purposes like that. Sketch paper even, you'll find it's like thinner with a bit more tooth to it for those graphite sketches. Even pastel paper, they're all going to work differently. I don't let that put me off, because in this mode I'm just experimenting and seeing what I can do, and just because it's not a watercolor paper doesn't mean I can't add water to it. I'm still going to try and do whatever I can do, but don't let that be your deciding factor on some of these supplies. I should always preface that these are how these work on this type of paper, but there are other applications that we could do on watercolor paper that would work a lot better on that. I'm just using this because this is a part of the challenge of doing the hashtag ArtSnacks challenge, is to use what's in the box. And I actually kind of find it interesting, because some of these techniques, even though they work, differently on watercolor paper, they have a better application for this. Like these specific little illustrations that I thought were just going to be just a nothing, turned out to be one of my favorite finds, because on watercolor paper, it's kind of designed to let that ink and that paint flow everywhere. On this, it doesn't really stay wet for very long, so it's just a bit of damp paper, and it's not going to feather and bleed a lot, because that's specifically what this paper is designed not to do. So I'm forcing it with the water, but then drawing a little snowflake in there, it kind of made these little fractals on the lines, and I thought that was just such a great little way to draw snowflakes, since they're all individual, no two are going to be the same. Essentially, that's kind of what we've created on this paper. Wouldn't necessarily have had the same effect doing this on a watercolor paper. It's just this specific pad and these supplies that I found that success with. So I think it's always important to point out what is working for this and maybe why that happened, just so you're not thinking, like, why didn't mine happen? Why didn't mine work like that? Sometimes it's a matter of, if you changed papers, you may not get the same result. If you've ever swatched out your watercolor sets on different types of watercolor paper, even the sizing that watercolor companies or the paper companies use in the paper will affect how the color looks. Or if you're using a slightly off-white paper as opposed to a brilliant white paper, the color is going to look different. So these are all pretty interesting things to think about if you are looking for some kind of consistency or to replicate something specific. But for the purposes of mixed media and how I like to create, it's all just up in the air all the time. So I don't really give it much notice or much thought or attention, I guess. But I thought I would point it out to you today, just in case it's something you'd never thought about. So we brought out the Hobonichi. I'm going to thumbnail a few ideas. This is the one that I decided to go with. I'm going to make Christmas cards for my family. Alrighty, let's make those Christmas cards. So the first thing I did was hop onto Photoshop and put together a little template. That way I could print straight onto the paper. I just pulled a few sheets out of the pad, popped them in the printer, and then printed this very simple Christmas card template over the top. I'm not very good at the computers, so it was a Christmas miracle that I could get this done, double-sided printing and all. But once I had finished, I managed to get 2 cards per sheet and fold them so that they were really long, elegant, narrow, thin Christmas card. I don't know why I associate these with being elegant. Is that just me, or does that come from somewhere? Like, is that official? Are long, narrow cards elegant, or did I just make that up? Anyway, I perceive them to be that way, and so I really enjoyed exaggerating that hat on the elf to really fill out that long space. I used the paintbrush and water to activate some of the ink from that letter pen and give the skin some shadows. Since I wasn't going to actually draw any skin tone or color it in, I wanted to put a bit of dimension and a bit of something there, so I just activated that ink to pull into the shadow area. I did my little ink bleed snowflake on the top of the Christmas hat as well, instead of the little fluff ball, and then decided to put red cheeks on all of them just to keep them similar. The only things I really changed between them were the hats and the snowflakes, and those were all just to highlight the different mediums and colors that were in the box. And it was a very, very simple approach. I think this has been a few months running now where I've had a very simple approach to what I've been doing. Maybe that's just the season I'm in, I'm not quite sure. But I do enjoy that, especially if you're going to be creating something quite repetitive. So something like Christmas cards. I really enjoy giving Christmas cards, but I love handmade cards more than anything. So I wouldn't typically endeavor on making a ton of them unless I had something that I could streamline the process for. So this is a pretty simple illustration that I could whip out, and then the only thing I was really paying time and attention to were some of the shadows on the face, and then whatever I was going to color in the hat, which was just different patterns and different textures and experimenting that we did in the beginning. So it is essentially all little simple bits that come together to make quite an effective card. I'm going to write on these ones and pop them in the box to send to my family in Australia, and so these will be my family's Christmas cards from me this year. Like I said, I do like to make Christmas cards. Cards are actually a really interesting thing. I'm not a big part of any card making worlds. There's actually a whole world of card makers out there, and they have their own massive creative community with lots of fantastic videos and techniques that sometimes I watch for different inspirations on how to use products and stuff. But typically in my mixed media world, I don't really create cards from scratch. I might put a printed image on a card, or maybe I would make one to get manufactured or something, but I did actually used to make handmade cards all the time. It's a bit of a long story for another time, but I really enjoyed making Christmas cards and birthday cards for people for many years of my life. And I guess to make a long story short, it was something that I felt like I could give that was that had a lot of value, was worth a lot, because I perceive art and creative arts and visual arts to have a lot of value. So it was something that I feel like I could give without having to spend a lot of money in those times where I didn't really have a lot of money to spend. And if that's something that resonates with you this year, I just want to let you know that I mean, Christmas cards, holiday cards, greeting cards, anything that is handmade from you is something that is truly treasurable and valuable. It is something so special to receive a gift that literally no one else could give. And even if you're doing a tutorial on the front of your card, or maybe you're just practicing your art and you're following a lesson, to the T, and maybe you think it's not really representative of you, there's still something. Even when you're following a lesson or a tutorial, there is still something that is inherently you about it. The colors that you choose, maybe even the slight jitter in your hand, or the way that you smudge the ink when you're drawing across your page. There is something about it that is going to signify that your hand was there and that your creativity literally created that. And so I think it's such a valuable thing, and if that is something that you feel compelled to give, or even something that would be your gift this year, take a lot of pride in that, because it's a very vulnerable thing to share, and I think it is worth so much. It is quite a wonderful gift to be able to give, seeing as you are literally the only person that can give it. No one else can get inside there and take your creativity and give it to someone else. That is only something that you can do. So I'll leave you with that, and I'll join you for the outro in a second. Radio, that's everything for the December 2020 ArtSnacks Plus box. Here are my little Christmas cards. I'm going to pop some writing in those and get them sent off to my family. I hope you find some time this season to make some cards of your own and to send that gift of creativity from you to your loved ones, friends and family all around the world. If you'd like to subscribe to ArtSnacks, you can use the code JAMES10 for a discount at checkout, and don't forget to share your work this month in the ArtSnacks Mix community, as well as on social media with the hashtag ArtSnacksChallenge. And from my family to yours, I'd love to wish you a wonderful and happy holiday season. Until next year, bye.